Hello and good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining the NAU Country Connection webinar today on Quality Loss Option. Let us be your guide. We are going to talk about EASYquote and EASYwriter Pro today and how our quality loss option will work within them. I am Hope Floberg. I am VP of IT Marketing and Training at NAU Country, and I am going to be your host today. And it is 10:30 on the nose, so we are going to get started. All right, we're going to head into our agenda here. So for today, we are going to cover lots of stuff, maybe not in this order. I'll do my best, but we are going to go over EASYwriter Pro. For those of you who were on the quality loss call that we had back last fall, we've had a lot of changes to make the system much more user-friendly for you when it comes to quality loss. So we're going to talk about EASYwriter Pro, how to add the option, what's going to change in your APH database, how are we going to get that pre-quality production into the database, and then the biggest time saver ever is how to utilize that quality loss optimizer. And then, of course, how do we do reporting and forms and documents around quality loss? We're also going to go into EASYquote. We want to make sure you can sell this option. So we're going to talk about how to do quality loss in prospect mode with existing insureds, and then how to do some scenario comparisons. What we want you to get out of this training course today, though, most importantly, is if you don't know the answers to something dealing with quality loss, that you have a resource to go to. So I'm going to start off by showing you where all of our resources are located from a documentation standpoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start from scratch and walk you through how to get to our resources within the agent portal. So I'm going to it's pretty sad when you can't spell your own company's website, www.naucountry.com. This is our website. If you haven't been out here yet, come out and check it out. There's lots out here. I am going to log in to the screen. You'll just get your login page, enter in your credentials, and you can click sign in. Now, there's a couple different ways to get to the section that I want to talk to you about today. On the agent portal, if you go up to this training menu option up here and go down to tips and tricks, on this page, you're able to search by category of what you're looking for. So you could go down and look up the production reporting training suite. Or if you just scroll down on the page here, you can see here is our quality loss option tips and tricks. If that is just too complicated, or maybe you're just not finding it, you can also go to the search option and type in quality loss and come to quality loss option, and right away the tips and tricks will come up. In the tips and tricks, a couple of areas that I want to highlight, and this will all be in your recap email, are first and foremost, the call that we're doing today is going to be located right here. You can click right on this pretty picture. This phone conversation or webinar is going to pop up for you. Second of all, we have the Quality Loss Optimizer user guide. This is going to cover start to finish everything that we're that we're training on today in detail. Then we also have the Quality Loss Option quick reference. I'm going to pull this one up because it's really valuable if you have questions on how does quality loss work with North Dakota PTY? How does quality loss work with master yields? How does it work in a situation if you have a yield floor or a yield cup? Great quick document to look at. It's a one-pager, has tons of valuable information. The other one that I want to point out to you is the APH option matrix. I utilize this matrix, feels like every day. So when you come in, this is going to show you how all of the various options in our system work together. So for instance, if we look at quality loss, which is down here at the bottom, and this first column here is yield adjustment. We can come down, read the box here. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but basically it's going to tell you that only one option, whether it be quality loss or yield adjustment, can be applied to an actual yield for an eligible crop year within the APH database. So this is also stating in here that if both apply and you do not opt out of the quality loss, no matter what, even if the yield adjustment is higher, the quality loss will still supersede over the yield adjustment, which is why it's important in those types of situations to opt out of quality loss. And our optimizer is going to help you do that today. But again, this matrix is going to give you a great indication of what options work together, which ones supersede other ones, etc. I recommend printing it off, having it at your desk. It's a great document. So again, all of those items are in our quality loss option tips and tricks, which will link up to that recap call today. Wonderful resource. Okay, we are going to head into the system and start doing some training here. So let me start off by talking about what is the quality loss option. So crop year 2021, RMA, or the Risk Management Agency, came up with the quality loss option, which allows our insureds to replace their actual yields based on post-quality production in their APH database with actual yields based on pre-quality total production. So that brings the next question is, how do we have this pre-quality information, or how do we get that information into our system? Excellent question. So I want to start out by talking about somebody new in the NAU country family. So if somebody is just transferring over to us from another company, unfortunately, we don't have all of their historical information in our system already. But that's okay, because all they need to do is submit their claim paperwork to you, which you can then give to our underwriters, and our underwriters have the capability of keying that information into our system off of that paperwork. Now, if you have an insured that's been with NAU country, we already have all of that data in our system. And now this is going to be important because you're going to want to know this. So from 2013 forward, we have been required to report pre-quality production to RMA. So that means it actually is documented in our system, and we can automatically pull in that information for you from as far back as 2013. So that's good news. Now I'm going to show you how you can actually pull it in to an actual APH database to look at it. So let's start off with one of our new features that we have in EASYwriter Pro, and it is in the Report Center. What we've done is we've added a new report called Quality Loss Units with Pre-Quality Production. So what this report is going to do is it's going to help to guide you to be able to know what insureds or what policies could quality loss be applicable on. Now, it does not mean that because a policy and a year within the APH database shows up in here, that it would definitely be the right choice to have quality loss. But again, so it's a guide to get started with, and I'm going to show you how it'll work here. So in the Report Center, if you didn't see what I clicked on to get there, it's just from our dashboard. You can click on this Report Center link at the top of the page. That's going to open up a new tab up here called Report Center. When I come in here, if you like to go, the route of actually looking things up step by step, you can come down on this left nav and choose the underwriting department. And then up at the top section of your screen here, you can choose the sub-menu option of MPCI. When you do that, all of the reports that are available to you are going to show up on the screen. They're in alphabetical order. So you're looking for quality loss. So you can come over here. It's located right here, quality loss units with pre-quality production. Now, if you want to do things a little bit more simplistically, or as I call myself, sometimes I can be a little lazy, you can also come over to this search option over on the side and type in quality. Quality loss, quality. You can even type in quality loss if you want to. Click enter, it'll show up right here for you to be able to click on. So I'm going to click on that. I do already have the report up in the background, but I do want to show you all of the great filter options that are available to you. So of course you can search by your agency. You can go down to an agent if you have multiple agents at your agency. You can look it up by underwriter, marketing rep, etc. Now the ones I find most valuable in here is the quality option selected feature. Now this is going to allow you to, maybe you don't want to look up all of the policies that you've already added quality loss for. You just want to see the additional ones so you can do a little bit more analysis. That's where you would use this. So if you want to look at ones that do not have quality loss already on the coverage, you'd come in here and select no, and it will filter down that information for you. Another cool thing here is if you are talking to an insured on the phone and you don't want to get this big long listing for your whole agency, you can actually type in the insured or the entity that you're visiting with and have it just pull up their information. Once you've entered in your parameters, you just click OK, and the form will generate for you. So I already do have the form or the report up on my screen here. Now, some items that I do want to point out on here, and I'm just going to scroll over to the side here. We obviously have our policy information, our insured name, county crop. Here is that QL selected column. So if it says yes here, that means you've already applied the QL option to that coverage. If it says no, obviously it means you haven't. It's going to show you over to the side here the year that you have that pre-quality production information on. So here it's 2014. It's on my wheat unit 101 for non-irrigated winter. Over to the side here, I'm going to come back to this T-yield column, but over to the side here, it's going to show me the production that I already have on that year within the database, and it's going to show me the yield that is already there for that year. Now, if I chose to add quality loss to this year or to this coverage, this is the pre-QA production that would come in, 624, and that would give me a pre-QA yield of 19. So just looking at this, you can see here that obviously utilizing that pre-QA production is going to increase my yield. So here I'd get 19 versus 13. Now, as I mentioned before, a couple things here. So this report is only going to pull in loss information or pre-QA information that's higher than what you already have. So if you're looking on this report for a policy that you knew you had a loss on and it's not showing up here, that might be right, because if the pre-QA production wasn't higher, the quality loss isn't going to benefit you in that situation. So it will not pull on here. Now, as I mentioned before, just because it shows on here doesn't mean quality loss is the best option. And that's why we added the T-yield on here. So as I mentioned before, when it comes to YA and QL, a lot of times if they're both on the policy, you want to verify which one's going to give you the higher yield. So looking at this T-yield here of 63, if I took 60% of that T-yield, my yield adjustment is going to give me a 38 yield. So 38 is going to be higher than 19. Might not make sense in this situation to do the quality loss. So again, the report is really guiding you to what policies have the pre-QA production that's higher than what you have today, but it doesn't always mean it's going to be the right choice for your policy. All right, I do have two items that I want to bring up on this report that have come up just in the last couple days that I want to give you a heads up on. So the first one is we do have a correction coming out to the system this evening for any policies that were rolled into the 2021 system after November 30th. The data might not be pulling up in here yet. And so tonight that correction goes out. So maybe you just want to wait to run this report until tomorrow. A majority of the policies were rolled, but I know there was a lot of North Dakota ones in particular that had not rolled by that date. The other item that I want to point out, and it seems to be specific to some of our earlier years, 2013, 2014, when we reported that pre-QA production, and that's what we're pulling from, is what we've reported onto RMA. There were some items or some units where, especially with maybe like an enterprise unit, where all of that pre-QA production was lumped together for all of the units within the enterprise unit. And so that's where I want to make sure some of those numbers could potentially be a lot higher than they should be. Again, we've only seen this in about 2013, 2014, but if you run into some of those situations, contact us or contact your underwriters so we can look into them a little bit more. Otherwise, the report is fabulous. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to dig a little bit deeper into one of these policies, and it's going to be the one that I was talking about here on the screen. So what's nice about this report is if you want to look at one of them, you just double click and it's going to take you right to that policy. I'm going to just pause for just a moment. I did see a question come in here. It's a question asking, where can I find the agenda from this training to print? That is an excellent question. I actually did not print off an agenda for this meeting ahead of time. Basically, I will supply it when we send out the recap, but we are touching on the new reporting features, EASYwriter Pro changes, EASYquote changes, and where to find the resources for all of the valuable information on this. So we'll make sure to send out the agenda though once we are done with the call today. Okay, so we are in that policy that we just discussed over on the report side. So I'm heading in here. The first thing I want to look at is, as you guys recall, we did not have quality loss already on this policy or this coverage. So we're going to start off by doing that. So to do that, first of all, I want to show you what it looks like before we add that option. So I'm on the Policy Crops tab right now. I'm going to click over to Acreage APH. Now, I know a lot of you probably already have experience with playing around in the system with quality loss, but I'm still going to go over it for those who haven't. So down at the bottom of the screen here, this policy has yield exclusion, YE. So if you look at the APH database, we have our production acres, our yield. Here, we actually have the ability to opt out of YE if we want to, but there's nothing dealing with pre-quality items at this time. And that's going to change. That's why I wanted to point that out. Also, at the top portion of the screen here, we have our optimizer, which is stating YE, because YE is on the policy. This is going to change to say YEQL once we add QL. And once we add it, there's going to be a new icon up here that says pre-quality production import. So if you come in here and you're looking and you're like, I don't even have that button, it's because you don't have quality loss added on to your coverage yet. So that's why I wanted to point that out. So let's head back over to Policy Crops. We're going to start off by endorsing out the policy. So I'm going to endorse the policy. And we're going to go down to our wheat line, and I'm going to double click on the wheat line. As that opens up, I'm just going to go to the Common Options section, and I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to add quality loss. So I'll click on that. Now, because this is a wheat policy, it's a winter wheat policy, it is going to ask me to verify my, give a signature validation and a date, just because I'm changing things way late in the game here. So we'll just enter that in and click OK. So once I do that, you'll see here that the QL option now shows in my common options, and you'll also see up at the top of the screen, a couple changes. Here's that pre-quality production import icon. Also, my optimizer has now changed to YEQL. I'm going to hit Save up here. And for those who did quality loss in the fall, at this point in time, if you flipped over to the Acreage APH tab, you can see here now I have those new fields for pre-quality production, pre-quality yield, and QL opt-out. What we had to do last fall is take an additional step to pull in that pre-quality production data, and we would have to go up to this icon up here and actually import in that information. Now, one of the changes that we did to make things easier is the minute you add it to your coverage and hit save, it's going to automatically pull in that data for you. So you may ask, well, why do we still have this button up here then? And that's an excellent question. It is to be utilized in situations where if you have put your pre-quality production information on the screen, but maybe you looked at your paperwork and something just wasn't matching up right, our underwriters have the capability to come into the APH database and overwrite this information that pulled in. So let's just say your underwriter came in, changed this 624 to a 700. And then you realized you were looking at the wrong claim paperwork. So you needed to start over. This is going to allow you to start over if you ever need to. So it'll just do a new re-import of that pre-quality production data. So shouldn't have to use it very often. All right, so before we get too in-depth with running the optimizer, what I want to do is I want us to do a little optimizing in our own minds ahead of time. So let's just say we didn't have an optimizer and we really had to figure this stuff out for ourselves. So let's come down to this database down here. And again, we're looking at the year 2014 because that's where we had that pre-quality production pull in for. So as we had mentioned earlier, the standard yield for this 2014 year is 13. Our pre-quality yield is 19, so that is higher. But like I said before, our T yield is 63. We take 60% of that, it's going to give us a 38, and we would rather use the yield of 38 than 19. Now with quality loss, if you go back to that APH matrix, if both QL and YA apply to the same year in your database and you do not opt out of QL, QL will always supersede. So in this situation, if we did not opt out and we're looking just at the YA and the QL in here, even though this is a 19 and this is a 38, it's going to give us the yield of 19. So that's why the optimizer is so important to be able to utilize, and so you don't have to do all those hand calcs. Now, on this policy though, we actually have another factor we need to take into play because the 2014 year is also eligible for the yield exclusion. And the yield exclusion, no matter what, if we don't opt out, supersedes both the quality or the quality yield and the YA yield. So let's take a look here at a spreadsheet. I'm going to just pull this over. I'm a calculations gal, so I like to look at all of the details ahead of time, even though we have an optimizer to do the work for you. So I took all of the years down here and plugged in the yields. If we just took the base yield information without any substitutions, added them together, we'd get a 494, which would give us divided by 10, a 49. Now, if we look at just substituting in the pre-QA information or the QL yield, we'd be substituting that 13 for a 19. So we're going to do that, and we're going to see where our numbers are leading us to. Now we have a 50 as our approved average. Then we're going to take a look at the YA or the yield substitution. So I have the T yield here. I've already factored for us what would be the yield adjustment. It's 38. So we can determine here where would it apply and be higher in this situation. It's on all 4 of these years. If we did that, we're looking at a 549 divided by 55. Now, I look at each of the yield exclusions individually because you can do them individually. However, in this case, if you choose to exclude and I'm saying that backwards. So YE is available in 2010, 2014, and 2015. If you actually utilize the YE exclusion, that's even going to get us higher. So we're now looking at 435, but only divided by 7 years in the database, because we're taking these yields out completely. And you can see here that that gets us to the highest approved yield of 62 with the options that we have available. So now let's see if we're right. Okay, so one thing that sometimes confuses me that I want to point out to you guys is in these columns, it's automatically going to default to a no when you come in. And what that means, because sometimes people perceive this as a double negative, it is saying quality loss opt out, and you're saying no. That means you do not want to opt out of quality loss, so you're keeping it. So in this situation, I am keeping the yield exclusion. I'm getting rid of this year. I am keeping the quality loss, which is superseded by this anyways. But some people get a little confused with that N in there. So let's run the optimizer and see what it's going to tell us to do. So this is going to look at both the yield exclusion and the quality loss, and it's going to give us a recommendation of what we should opt out of and what we shouldn't. Before we hop into the yield optimizer though, I do want to point out that the YE and QL optimizer will not take the yield floor option into account. If you want to utilize the yield floor, you do need to manually opt out of the QL option to see what yield the yield floor will get for you. So again, the yield floor is not looked at in the optimizer window. Now, I do always need to stress that this is just a recommendation and that we still need to have our insureds looking at the databases to determine if it's the right situation for them, because a system is a system, and even though it's super intelligent, there can always be flaws. So we're going to click on the yield exclusion optimizer. You can see I've been in here playing. We do have history to be able to look at, you know, who has ran this before? What was the data that came back? So just so you know that the tracking is available in the system. And we have two options at the top of the screen. We can run the optimizer, and then we can reset what we had already ran. So maybe you run it, you talk to your insured, they decide, no, I do not want to go that route. You can either manually change it in the database, which I'm going to show you, or you can just reset the information. So I'm going to hit run. It's going to just verify, are you sure that's what you want to do? Yeah, I'm sure. I'm going to come up to the top of the screen here, and it's going to give me what it's telling. It's going to tell me what to do here. So basically, wheat unit 101, the year 2014, it is telling me for the yield exclusion option not to opt out of yield exclusion. So to keep the yield exclusion, but it is telling me to opt out of that quality loss, which we've already discussed as to why. At this point in time, if your insured isn't with you, what you can do is you can print this information or export out this information, and then you can attach it with APH or their APH form so they can evaluate the system themselves. So that's available to you. I'm going to proceed and hit close. And when I do that, my quality loss option is now going to show a Y, which means I should opt out of quality loss in this situation. I know that was a lot I covered here. I'm going to just take a real quick peek. I have lots of questions coming in, which is fabulous. Let's see here. You said your pre-QL options go back to 2013. What if there were quality issues prior to 2013? Excellent question, Kelly. So two things. At the beginning of the call, I did mention that our underwriters have the capability to key in this information into the APH database. They just need to have the claim paperwork to be able to do so. So we can just get them that claim paperwork, they can key in that information. I do know, and I just don't know what RMA has on their schedule, but I do know there's been a little bit of talk of trying to pull further back information, but to be honest, it wasn't required to report to RMA until 2013, so I don't know how much of that data we'd even be able to get from them. But we can definitely key off of the claim paperwork. Great question. Another question, we can only do what you're doing now if the producer chooses this at sales closing, or can we do this as a decision tool as long as we don't commit? Okay, so I am actually going to get to that, but yes, so you can, as of right now, hold on, let me make sure I read this. If the producer chooses this at sales closing, or can we do this decision tool? Okay, so great question. Two parts with this one too. You can actually do this in EASYquote, which we're going to talk about. So you'd be able to run these same scenarios in EASYquote and get the same optimizer kind of look and feel, the printout. Otherwise, if we do already have their policy in the system, you could run the optimizer, send them that printout or that Excel page, and then just defer their policy. And the last thing, and I'm going to show you this in just a minute, if their policy is in our system, we can actually add QL and we can print the APH document with the optimizer ran on it, but not actually run the optimizer in the policy. So that might have seemed confusing. I'll go over it a little bit more in depth here in just a few minutes. And let's see, I have one more. How can we get the data before adding to the policy so that we can review all options? Okay, in order to use the QEQL optimizer and pre-quality import, it appears they must already have added the QL to the policy. How can we get the data before adding the policy so that we can review all options? That's an excellent question on that one too, and I'm going to show you how we can do that in EASYquote. So excellent questions coming through. Hopefully I'll be able to answer them coming up here in just a few minutes. Okay, so that is one situation. I now want to go over a situation or a policy in our system where maybe the optimizer would not make a difference. So let's just hop into another policy here and keep the questions coming. I will stop and look at the chat after each different scenario that we go through. Okay, so another policy that I have here, come into Floberg Farms. I am again going to add the QL into our wheat line in here. So again, I'm going to come up, endorse the policy, go down to my wheat line and double click, come up to the top of the screen here and click the QL. I'm on a wheat policy again, so I just need to validate that signature back to where it should be and click OK. Again, it's going to add the QL down here. I hit save at the top of the screen. And now let's go over, once it saves, to my acreage APH tab. And we're going to go down to, let me go down to wheat. And let's look at unit 203 here. So here's another situation where our pre-quality information has already populated into the screen. Again, it's only going to populate if it's higher than what we already have for production for that year in our database. So in this situation, what we have is we're looking at a yield of 69 as our standard yield. Here, the pre-quality yield is an 82. And then if we look over at the T yield, automatically we can see that our YA would be lower. So in this situation, just looking at it, I would say we do not want to opt out of the quality loss option, and we want to utilize this quality loss option. One thing I forgot to point out though, on our last screen is the color chips here on the screen. So where we have our pre-quality production, there's going to be a red color chip. If you hover over that, it's just going to tell you that this information was imported in from loss data. The other item that could show here is an orange color chip. And if there's an orange color chip, that means that it's been imported in from loss data. However, it's been edited since then, meaning that situation I gave you before where maybe the claim paperwork came in and it was slightly different, and so we needed to alter it. So that would show up with an orange color chip. So let's just be certain that our decision to keep quality loss is correct here. Let's go up to our QL optimizer. You'll notice it just says QL now, and that's because we don't have the yield exclusion option on this coverage. Click on that. I'm going to run it, hit OK. No changes were made to the policy's APH data, basically meaning that what we have on the screen is what we should be doing. Okay, now I want to hit another option for you guys. So let's go into one additional policy here. And this policy actually already has the quality loss on it. So this is what we can do for our insured. So if we have the quality loss option on a coverage, so even if I came in here and I added it to a coverage, as long as we have our pre-quality information already pulled in. So I'm looking at grain sorghum here. We'll do, oh, that's corn. Let me just scroll down way to the bottom. Okay, so you can see here we have our pre-quality information in here. If we have not ran the optimizer yet, but we want our insureds to be able to see what does this database look like, what is the recommendation to them? What we can do is we can go over to our documents on the policy. We can click on policy documents. And then what we can do is we can actually generate an APH document form with the optimizer results on it, even though we don't have the optimizer results on the policy. So that way they can see it, they can review it, they can sign it, send it back to you, and then you know you have in writing it's okay to run that optimizer and follow through. So let's go category. I'm going to choose production reporting. The document, I'm going to choose the actual production history database, add that. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, I have use QY or yield exclusion optimization. This actually is a little bug. It should say QL in this situation, but this is saying that we can use that just on the form. Now what I'm going to do is hit preview. And when that generates, we're going to go to that grain sorghum unit. And it's sometimes a little hard to see on the documents here, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And we're going to go to that unit in particular. So one thing I should point out here is when you're on this screen, if you don't have QL, you can get 3 APH databases to a page. Once you add QL though, it takes you down to just 2 pages, just because of all those additional columns. So that's one other thing I should point out to you guys. Okay, so we're going down to unit 301. Okay, so here is our grain sorghum unit. I'm going to scroll down just so you can see a little bit more. Oh my goodness, a little too far. Okay, so here is our APH information. So down in the lower section of the screen on 2020, we had a yield of 2. With the QL option, again, the information or the yield was just 2. Now, if you look up on the right-hand side of the APH database, you'll see that our T yield is 69, so that is definitely higher. So what that QA optimizer did is it came in here and it gives you, or gives the insured, this indicator. It's like a, I don't even know what that, what that icon is called. But if you take that and you look down at the bottom of the screen, it states when that little indicator is there that the APH has been modified by YE or the QL optimizer. So this is telling them in this situation that they should opt out of the QL, which would give them the higher yield. So you do have the capability to do that on the APH document if you choose to run the YE optimizer as the document option without ever having to add it to your policy. All right, I know I'm going fast. All of this is completely documented in our user documentation too. So if you feel like, where did she go? Did I miss a step? It's step by step in the user documentation. All right, I do want to check the chats here though before we go over to our quoting system here. Let's see. Okay, great question. Can the selection be done on an individual unit instead of the coverage? So it's an excellent question. QL as an option does need to be added to the coverage, but the election to actually have the QL on the unit actually comes down to a unit and a specific APH year in the database. So yes, it needs to be added on a coverage level, but really that, again, that QL really comes down to the specific unit and the year in question. Okay, Ginger asks a great question. Why didn't the optimizer address the other years with YE? So that's an excellent question. So actually it did. So on that first policy, I think I still have it up on the screen here. So in the optimizer, and I'm really glad you asked this. So she was saying, you know, here, if you look at this line, this unit, it says do not opt out of YE. So it says no. But if you look down here, there's 2 other years that have YE. Why didn't it tell us anything in here? The reason why is because we shouldn't change anything. So the only time it's going to show up in here is if we need to opt out. So hopefully that helps a little bit. And the reason why this one did, even though we don't opt out of it, is because QL is on the same one. So it will show you both. And I actually get that question a lot. In the optimizer, a lot of people were saying, well, it didn't even show me the quality loss for these years. Correct. It will only show you the quality loss if you should opt out. Okay, hold on. 2 more questions. Thanks, guys, for being so engaged. Okay, is that the same on the APH? It only shows you if you should opt out. Oh, I don't know if I'm understanding this question. So if you add quality loss, it's always going to pull it in to your APH database no matter what, and it's automatically going to have a no here, meaning keep quality loss. So that will show no matter what. Same with the YE. It's not, you can come down here and you can manually change that, or you can run the optimizer. But again, the optimizer is only going to show those lines if it wants you to opt out. Okay, hopefully that helps a little bit. I did get a question, and this is another excellent question, but it's one I do not feel educated enough to answer. There is a question on ballpark, what is the cost to add quality loss? Excellent question. I would recommend that you contact your underwriter or your marketing rep with that question, because they'll know quite a bit more than I will. Okay, so I am going to go and head on over to our quoting system to show you a couple things over there. So hopefully this answers some of the questions that have come through. So we're going to start off by going into our EASYquote system, and I am going to click on, which one should we start with? Let's start with an existing policy. So an existing policy, I'm going to come over and I'm going to click open, and I'm going to type in my policy number here. We'll get that opened up on the screen. Okay, I have an error here, and I actually wanted to leave up this error for you guys because some people feel that when you get an error message right away, something's wrong. So in this situation, this is a great one to talk about, and we'll talk about more on this next week's call on EASYquote, but this is pertaining to not being able to find a hail rate. And that's just because in this state, our hail rate book isn't approved yet. So just so you know, on this one, I'm just going to hit close, and it's still going to let me into the system and look at the policy with no issues. Okay, so here I'm going to focus on a wheat line down at the bottom of the page. We're going to look at a summer follow. line. And what I'm going to do is just double click on this wheat line or this wheat coverage. Again, I want to show you what it looks like before I add the quality loss. So for those of you who had the question of, you know, what happens if they're not sure if they want it, we want to quote first. If they're in our system, this is what you can do today. So I'll scroll down and we're going to take a peek at the 10-year APH information. So this is what's currently on their policy. It just shows your yield here. And again, it stops at the YE opt-out. Once I add the QL option here, so I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to scroll down again and come down a little bit in the APH information. If this is a policy that has been with it, it's automatically going to pull in that pre-quality production and pre-quality yield information for you. So again, if they've been with us, you can do this in EASYquote by just adding that QL option and it'll pull it in. Not only will it pull it in for you, it's actually going to run the optimizer automatically. So let's look at this line here. We're looking at a yield of 18. We also have a pre-quality yield that came in at 21. So again, it's higher. Could be something that, you know, we want to look at a little bit more. I'm going to look at the T yield because in this situation, I do have YA on the policy. Taking that 52 times the 60% is going to give me a 31. And I'd rather go with the 31 in this situation. So as I mentioned before, that optimizer already ran and put a yes in here. Now, if I don't agree with it, I can just click on this box and change it to a no. Otherwise, if I click save, there's that hail message again. What it's going to do is right at the top of the screen, it's going to give me a yellow bar. We call these a toaster message. And it says some quote line APH values were automatically set to opt out of the quality loss in favor of a higher yield. Click here for more details. This not only did the unit I added the QL for, but it did all of my wheat for me that are in that coverage. And it's showing me what 2 wheat units for which years I should opt out of the quality loss for. And this works exactly the same for yield exclusion. So if we are, and this is the same window pretty much that you saw on the policy editor, I can export this information or print it and give it to my insureds to evaluate. All right, I'm now going to head into, I'm going to leave this up in case we have questions, but I'm going to head into a prospect quote. So if I'm working with somebody who is not currently in our system and they want to get a quote on what things would look like with quality loss, we can do that. So let's go into the MPCI folder, which allows me to do a prospect quote. And I'm just going to type in some information in here real quick. We'll do corn. And we'll just go pretty standard. So with quality loss, and this is probably very obvious, if you want to get an accurate quote, we do need to key in the APH information. Otherwise, it really doesn't help us in this situation. So I'm going to add in the quality loss option. We'll also add in YA for a little bit of fun. It gives us a little variety. And then in the combo plan section, we need to use the 10-year APH. So I check that and I can scroll down and now I have an area where I can key in their 10-year APH information. Now, I don't want to spend forever having you watch me key in information, but I am going to do the last 4 years here just so you can see how it will work. So as I key in my acres and my yield, you can see that my yield type in this situation is switching to an actual. So I'm just going to key in. We'll get this one a little bit lower of a yield so we can play with that pre-quality info. And we'll just do the last 4. Now, what's nice about the quoter, and this works on existing policies too. So the policy that I was just on, I could have done this for. you as an agent, you have the ability to key in pre-quality production in here and play with these values. So I can come over here and I can key in some information here, and let me do one on 2022. We'll do that. Okay, so I had pre-quality production. Talking to my insureds, this is what they feel like they had for this year. Now, here you can see that right away, the optimizer ran for me. So I'm looking over here at, oh, no, it actually hasn't. I have to hit calculate. So let me hit calculate. When you hit calculate, the optimizer is going to run for you on a prospect quote as well. So looking at 2018, I have a pre-quality yield of 107. If I take a peek over here, that must be higher than what the 60% would be. Yet on the 2020 line, 82, 82 looks like they're the same. If I take 184 times the 60%, I'm at 110. So that would be higher than utilizing this 82. The system already knew that for me, plugged in the yes. So this would give you an idea of should you opt out of a couple of those years, and then what would be your approved average if you utilized or did not utilize that quality loss. Similar to our process in EASYwriter Pro, our EASYquote optimizer will also not take the yield floor into effect when looking at the various yields in process. You do need to manually opt out of the QL or YE option to be able to have the yield floor apply. The other thing I do want to show you real quick, I'm just going to save this. And then I'm going to go into the scenario screen. I feel like this scenario screen is such a good thing to use too when you're talking about quality loss. And this is where some of that cost information comes in. So I have quality loss here. Yes, it's potentially giving me a better yield, but does the yield outweigh what the cost of the, the option is? This is where you can come in here and you can play with those values. So right now up on the screen, I have 75% coverage up to 85% coverage of the unit we just did with quality loss. If I want to look at the same situation, but not using the quality loss, so what that's going to do is it's going to take me back to not having those quality loss values in here. It's going to take that, also change the premium too, and it's going to show me on the screen here, what does my quality loss look like with having the option versus not having the option. Now, on this screen, I do like to point out, just because sometimes you can't see it, so these colors correlate to your situations up at the top of the screen, but they also correlate to the values down at the bottom. So if you wanted to do a side-by-side comparison of your guarantee and your coverage, get down to the premium a little bit, if you click on this blank header right above the guarantee BU, or bushels, you can just click right on that and it'll go side by side so you can see them in comparison with one another. All right, so that sums up our EASYquote section of being able to do scenarios, prospects, existing. I'm going to peek to see if I have any other questions on here. Will it optimize if you choose to click on the YEQL optimizer, or when you add two options, will they opt in or opt out in the background right away? Okay, so I'm not sure if I fully understand this question, but I'm going to attempt to answer it. So in EASYwriter Pro, you have to hit the optimizer to be able to have it tell you if you should opt in or opt out of the QE or QE. Now I'm blending them. Yield exclusion or quality loss. However, in EASYquote, it is automatically going to do it for you. Run the optimizer when you click that calculate APH information. And then, will this work for in-house transfers? So yes, if we have brought over the policy and we have it in the system, you could run it in EASYquote or actually in EASYwriter Pro. The only downfall with that is if we do not have their historical information already in the system for those past year's losses, we would need their claim paperwork to be able to key that in. All right, one more question. I missed it. Where did you find the QL optimizer box in the quoter? There is no QL optimizer box in the quoter. It is, it just is automatically done for you when you hit calculate APH. So excellent questions. And then I don't know how to answer this one. Great question. I was asked, is quality loss a pilot program for 2021? I, for some reason, wasn't thinking it was a pilot program, but that is a great question for your underwriter. So I just want to recap while I have a couple minutes left on the call. As a reminder, all of this stuff that we went over today, if you go into Agent Portal, Training, Tips and Tricks, go down to Quality Loss, click on that. This recording is going to be here later on today. User guide, start to finish, everything we talked about here, and then underwriting items on here for reference documentation and the APH option matrix is all here. And you can also look for the recap email that'll be coming out this afternoon with links to all of this information. All right, I am going to give you guys 4 minutes back of your day. I appreciate your time. Please go out and register for other connection calls if you liked today's training. Otherwise, again, thanks so much for the engagement and have a great day, everyone. Bye.